How to control your emotions. Hey Reddit, I'm Christian, 24M, and I need to talk about something that shook me to my core last week. It was a day that started with purpose and ended with me sitting on a crowded bench in Los Angeles, sobbing uncontrollably, questioning who I even am. I've always prided myself on being composed, level-headed, and, honestly, a little tough. But that day broke me. I thought I understood my limits, my boundaries, and the way my emotions worked. Turns out, I didn't. And now, I'm left wondering if I'm just holding myself to impossible standards, or if I've been ignoring a storm brewing inside me for years. It started as a sunny, buzzing afternoon in LA, with the city's energy running high as usual. Skaters zipped past us on the Venice boardwalk, the scent of saltwater and street food mixed in the air, and the hum of street musicians added rhythm to the chaos. As part of my church's Evangelizing group, I felt like I had a purpose amidst the madness. I was there to spread hope, to share my story, and maybe, just maybe, to help someone else find their way. That's what I told myself as we handed out pamphlets and started conversations. But beneath the surface, I couldn't shake this faint uneasiness, like the city's raw energy was seeping into my chest and making it hard to breathe. The first person I approached was an older man leaning against a railing, his wrinkled hands clutching a half-empty cup of coffee. I smiled and introduced myself, my voice steady but rehearsed. "Hi, I'm Christian, and I just wanted to share something that changed my life." Before I could even finish, he shook his head and muttered, "Not interested," like he'd heard it 1,000 times before. I swallowed the sting of rejection and moved on. No big deal, I thought. There's always someone willing to listen. But as I approached the next few people, I noticed a pattern. Rejection after rejection. Each one chipped away at my confidence. By the fourth attempt, I felt like I was walking into a battlefield without armor. This time, it was a guy who looked like he belonged on an NFL roster, tall, broad, wearing a Lakers jersey stretched over his frame. I approached him with the same practiced smile, but he didn't even give me a chance. "What do you want?" he snapped, his voice low and sharp. I stammered, trying to explain, but his glare made the words catch in my throat. He stepped closer, towering over me. "You think I need saving or something? Get out of here before I make you regret it." My hands trembled as I backed away, muttering an apology. I felt my face flush with humiliation and something deeper, something I couldn't name. As I retreated to a bench near the Santa Monica Pier, I couldn't stop replaying his words. My chest felt tight, my legs shaky, and my mind scattered. Normally, the waves crashing in the distance and the salty breeze from the ocean would soothe me. The pier is where I go to reset, to clear my head when life feels too loud. But this time, it was like the city was closing in on me. I could hear the sound of skateboard wheels clattering on the pavement, couples laughing, the faint hum of a saxophone from a street performer. It was overwhelming, like all the noise was pressing down on me. I stared out at the water and tried to breathe deeply. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Over and over again. But the emotions kept building, rising like a wave I couldn't stop. I wasn't even sure what I was feeling. Was it frustration? Embarrassment? Anger? Or all of it at once? My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might be having a panic attack. I sat there, forcing myself to calm down, reminding myself that this was supposed to be a day of purpose, a day of helping others. I thought of the testimonies I'd heard in church, of people overcoming their own struggles to bring light to someone else. That thought gave me the strength to stand back up. I couldn't let this day end like this. When I rejoined the group, I decided to partner with my pastor. He's the kind of person who makes everyone feel at ease, a calming presence even in the most chaotic situations. I thought maybe some of his calm would rub off on me. We walked together down the boardwalk, and soon, we came across two women sitting on a low wall, sipping iced coffee. They looked friendly and open, so we decided to approach them. As we introduced ourselves, I noticed how engaged they were. They smiled, nodded, and even asked questions. For the first time that day, I felt like I wasn't just talking to a wall. I began to share my testimony, telling them about the dark time in my life when I felt completely lost. I explained how my faith had been the only thing that pulled me out of that place. As I spoke, I felt a flicker of hope, a sense of purpose returning. But then it happened. The lump in my throat. The burning behind my eyes. I tried to push through, but my voice cracked. I felt tears pooling in my eyes, threatening to spill over. I paused, hoping I could hold them back, but it was no use. The floodgates opened, and suddenly, I was sobbing. Not just a tear or two, this was full-on, ugly crying. My chest heaved, my face burned, and my words were choked by gasps and hiccups. One of the women reached out, her voice soft and kind. "It's okay, take your time," she said, but that only made it worse. I felt like I was falling apart in front of them, in front of my pastor. I couldn't control it, couldn't stop the tears. I wanted to disappear, to crawl into a hole and never come out. I managed to mutter an apology and stumbled away, leaving my pastor to finish the conversation. I walked back to that same bench near the pier, sat down, and let it all out. The tears came harder this time, shaking my whole body. I buried my face in my hands, feeling raw, exposed, like I'd been turned inside out. People walked by, some glancing at me with pity, others ignoring me entirely. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, crying harder than I'd cried in years. Every emotion I'd been suppressing, anger, sadness, frustration, poured out all at once. I felt weak, broken, like a failure. When I finally calmed down enough to stand, I wiped my face and tried to pull myself together. I even went back to the women to apologize again, but I could barely get the words out before the tears started threatening to come back. Eventually, I had to walk away for good. I couldn't face them or anyone else. Later that night, my pastor tried to reassure me. "It's a good thing to feel deeply," he said. "It means you're connected to the Spirit." But I couldn't see it that way. All I saw was weakness. I felt unmanly, broken, like I wasn't in control of myself. So here I am, turning to Reddit. How do you control your emotions when they hit like a tidal wave? How do you keep from breaking down in public, especially when it's the worst possible moment? I don't want to feel like this anymore, like a ticking time bomb, waiting to explode. If you've got advice, I'm all ears. A guy who broke down in the heart of LA. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I replayed the events of the day like a broken record. The old man shaking his head, the guy in the Lakers jersey towering over me, the sound of my own voice cracking as I tried to explain myself. And then, the crying, the uncontrollable, raw, humiliating sobs that I couldn't stop no matter how hard I tried. I kept asking myself, what happened to me? I stared at the ceiling of my apartment, the hum of traffic outside filling the silence. My mind refused to quiet down. I tried praying, but even that felt hollow, like I was just going through the motions. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd failed, not just at evangelizing, but at being the person I thought I was. I'd always believed I was strong, composed, someone who could handle anything. But now, I wasn't so sure. The next day, I avoided my phone. I didn't want to see any messages from the group or hear my pastor's kind, but inevitably awkward words of encouragement. I didn't want to face anyone. Instead, I went for a walk, hoping the fresh air might clear my head. Los Angeles was alive as always, people rushing to work, tourists snapping selfies, street vendors calling out to passers-by. I found myself wandering back toward the pier, the place where it had all gone wrong. The smell of salt water hit me as I approached, and for a moment, I hesitated. Part of me wanted to turn around and never come back, but another part, something deeper, pushed me forward. I sat down on the same bench where I'd cried the day before. The memories came flooding back, but this time, I let them. I didn't try to push them away or drown them out. I just sat there, staring at the waves, and let myself feel everything. The frustration, the shame, the sadness. I let it all wash over me like the tide. After a while, I started to feel lighter. Not better, exactly, but like I wasn't carrying the weight alone anymore. Like maybe it was okay to feel this way, even if it wasn't comfortable. That realization stuck with me as I made my way back home. I started thinking about why I'd broken down the way I did, why my emotions had felt so overwhelming. And I began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, I'd been suppressing things for a long time. Maybe the guy in the Lakers jersey wasn't the real problem. Maybe he was just the final straw. I started journaling that night, something I hadn't done in years. At first, it was hard to put my thoughts into words. Everything felt jumbled, chaotic. But as I wrote, things started to make sense. I realized how much pressure I'd been putting on myself, not just to be a good evangelist, but to be a good everything. A good friend, a good Christian, a good man. I'd been carrying all of it without even realizing it, and eventually, it had to come out. By the time I finished writing, I felt a strange sense of relief. I didn't have all the answers, I still don't, but I felt like I was starting to understand myself a little better. Over the next few days, I tried to take things slow. I focused on taking care of myself, on being honest about how I was feeling instead of trying to shove it all down. It wasn't easy. There were still moments when I felt like crying, when the weight of everything threatened to pull me under again. But instead of fighting it, I let myself feel it. And somehow, that made it a little easier to bear. Now, as I write this, I'm still figuring things out. I don't have some magic solution for controlling my emotions, but I'm starting to think that maybe control isn't the answer. Maybe the goal isn't to bottle everything up until it explodes, but to let yourself feel what you need to feel when you need to feel it. That's why I'm here, Reddit. I want to know, how do you deal with emotions that feel bigger than you? How do you navigate the moments when you feel like you're losing control? I'd love to hear your stories, your advice, anything that might help me make sense of this. Thanks for reading. A guy still piecing himself together in LA.